Before I start the video, I want to say that a lot of people watch my videos without a subscription. If my content resonates with you, you could subscribe to the channel. Thus YouTube would promote it more, which in turn would motivate me to release and improve content more often. Thank you. I never thought that something like this could happen in my quiet neighborhood. I was awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of frantic screams coming from the hallway of my apartment building. As I opened my door to see what was going on, I saw a bloody woman with what appeared to be stab wounds around her neck, and my neighbor pinning another woman to the wall and yelling at her. "Why did you push my cat?" He kept shouting at her, his face twisted in rage. I immediately called 911 and tried to intervene, but my neighbor was too focused on the woman he was pinning to the wall. I could see the fear in her eyes and knew that I had to do something. "Stop it. Let her go." I yelled at my neighbor, but he seemed startled by my presence and decided to escape through a side door. I stayed with the victims as we waited for the police and paramedics to arrive. The woman with the stab wounds was in bad shape, and I did my best to keep her conscious until the paramedics arrived. Later on, I found out that the suspect's name was Arvin Pasha, 32, and he was now facing charges of 1 count of aggravated assault involving 2 alleged victims. I was surprised at my neighbor's behavior since I had known him for 6 years. The incident also made the news, and even Airbnb released a statement confirming that the incident took place at one of their listings in Vancouver. They stated that incidents like this were exceptionally rare and that they took immediate action to support guests. But what I couldn't shake was the feeling of unease that lingered in me. How could someone I had known for so long be capable of such violence? Was there something I had missed? I couldn't help but feel like I had failed to see the signs. Days turned into weeks, and I tried my best to move on from the incident. But then one day, I received a phone call from the police. They wanted to know if I had noticed anything strange about my neighbor's behavior leading up to the incident. I was taken aback by the question and told them that I hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary. But as the conversation went on, I began to recall certain instances that now seemed suspicious in hindsight. Small things that I had brushed off before suddenly took on a new significance. The police thanked me for my time and assured me that they were doing everything in their power to get to the bottom of the case. Weeks turned into months, and I slowly began to put the incident behind me. But then one day, I received a summons to testify in court. I was nervous as I took the stand, my eyes scanning the courtroom for any sign of my neighbor. As I began to recount the events of that fateful night, a strange feeling came over me. It was as if I was seeing the incident from a new perspective. The fear and confusion I had felt that night were replaced by a sense of clarity. It was then that I realized that I had never really known my neighbor at all. The person I thought I knew was just a facade, a mask he wore to hide his true nature. As I stepped down from the witness stand, I knew that I had played a small part in bringing justice to the victims of that terrible night. But I also knew that I would never be able to forget what I had seen and what had taught me about the people around me. Pasha was eventually found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. And while justice had been served, the scars left by that night would never fully heal. But I knew that I had to keep moving forward, to keep trusting the goodness of people, even when it seemed like it was hard to find. I had always been a bit wary of booking an Airbnb, but I never expected my first experience to be like this. My friend and I had planned a weekend getaway in Philadelphia, and we decided to rent an Airbnb in the heart of the city. The listing had great reviews, and the price was too good to pass up. When we arrived, everything seemed normal. The apartment was clean and spacious, and we were excited to explore the city. But as the night went on, things started to feel off. I had gone to take a shower when I noticed something strange. Above me, there was a sprinkler system, but something about it didn't feel quite right. It was then that I noticed a tiny camera lens staring back at me. I was horrified. Had someone been watching me this whole time? I quickly got dressed and went to check the other rooms, and that's when I discovered even more hidden cameras. My friend and I were in shock. We couldn't believe that someone had violated our privacy like this. We immediately called the Airbnb post, but they never answered. Feeling unsafe and violated, we decided to leave and find another place to stay. We reported the incident to the Airbnb company and the police, but we never received a satisfactory response. As the days went by, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. We didn't know who had been monitoring us or what they had done with the footage they had captured. It wasn't until a few weeks later that we received a call from the police. They had arrested the owner of the Airbnb for voyeurism and possession of child pornography. I couldn't believe it. How could someone be so sick and twisted? The thought of what could have happened if we hadn't discovered those cameras still sends shivers down my spine. In the end, the experience taught me a valuable lesson. While Airbnb can be a great way to find affordable lodging, it's important to be cautious and aware of the risks. And when something feels off, it's better to trust your instincts and get out before it's too late. I still feel violated by what happened, but I'm grateful that we were able to get out of that situation before things got any worse. And I hope that by sharing my story, others will be more aware and cautious when booking their own Airbnb experiences. I had always been a fan of unique travel experiences, and renting a place on a farm through Airbnb seemed like the perfect opportunity for me to indulge in my passion. So when I came across a listing that seemed to offer just that, I jumped at the chance. The host, a woman named Maggie, was very responsive and had great reviews, and I couldn't wait to experience life on the farm with her and her family. My excitement only grew as I embarked on a beautiful hike through the mountains, knowing that I had a cozy farmhouse waiting for me at the end of it. But as I arrived at the address, my heart sank. The land was quiet and empty, and there were no signs of life anywhere. The chicken coop was empty, and there was no horse in sight. The doors to the house were wide open, and yet there was no one around. My mind raced with possibilities. Had something happened to Maggie and her family? Had they left in a hurry? Or was this all just a terrible misunderstanding? I tried to shake off the unease and explore the house, but everything only added to my confusion. The lights wouldn't turn on, the faucet was barely running, and the fridge smelled terrible. It was clear that we couldn't stay there, at least not without some answers. So my partner and I quickly packed our bags and drove to the nearest town to find a place to stay for the night. As we settled into our motel room, I couldn't help but feel disappointed and frustrated. What had gone wrong? And why had Maggie disappeared without a trace? The next morning, we decided to go back to the farm to see if we could find any clues. As we approached the property, we saw a car parked in the driveway, and my heart leaped with hope. But as we got closer, we realized that it wasn't Maggie's car, and there was no one in sight. We decided to investigate the house more thoroughly this time. And as we looked through the various rooms, we noticed something strange. The blankets on the bed had been moved, and there was a faint odor coming from underneath them. As we lifted the blankets, we were horrified to find a dead cat, its eyes open and lifeless. We knew then that something was seriously wrong. We contacted the police, who came to investigate the scene. It turned out that Maggie and her family had been involved in a car accident and had died instantly. It was a warm summer day when my parents and I arrived at our vacation destination. We were excited to explore the city and have some quality family time. As soon as we got off the bus, we were approached by a bald guy who offered us a place to stay. I didn't have a good feeling about him, but my dad, who was exhausted from the trip, agreed to go with him. We followed the bald guy through a neighborhood that looked unfamiliar and sketchy. As we walked, a young waiter from a nearby cafe came up to my mom and me and warned us not to go with the guy, saying that he was up to no good. This only made me feel more uneasy, but we decided to check out the place anyway. When we arrived at the apartment, we had to climb a lot of stairs to get to the room. The moment we stepped inside, I felt like I couldn't breathe. The room was stuffy, dark, and bunker style, with colourful but unsettling furniture. My mom and I protested, saying we'd like to check out another place, but the bald guy got weirdly desperate, insisting that we wouldn't find a cheaper place and that he had other rooms. His demeanour changed from calm to frustrated and almost angry, which only made me more scared. Finally, my dad told him that we wouldn't stay there, and we quickly left. As we passed by the cafe again, the waiter told us that the bald guy had criminal ties. We were grateful to find another apartment, but the experience left me feeling claustrophobic and anxious. I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if we had stayed there. For the rest of the trip, we had a good time exploring the city and enjoying each other's company. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept imagining what might have happened if we had stayed in that apartment. Would we have been robbed? Kidnapped? Worse? As the years went by, I tried to forget about that vacation, but I couldn't. I still felt uneasy every time I thought about it. Finally, after a few years, I decided to do some research. I found out that the bald guy had been arrested for kidnapping and extortion, and that his apartment had been used as a hideout for a notorious gang. My worst fears had been confirmed. It's been a long time since that vacation, and I've since grown up and started a family of my own. But I'll never forget the feeling of fear and uncertainty that came over me that day, and I'll always be grateful that my family and I were able to escape unharmed. I was driving across the country, taking a road trip to clear my head. I needed a break from my life, my job, and everything that came with it. I had planned to drive through Kansas on my way to Colorado, but I didn't have a place to stay for the night. So I opened up the Airbnb app and searched for a cheap place to crash for the night. That's when I stumbled upon the $12 a night Airbnb. It was a quaint little house on farmland, surrounded by nothing but fields as far as the eye could see. It seemed like the perfect place to spend the night and get some rest. When I arrived, it was already midnight, and the owner of the house was already asleep. She had left the door unlocked for me, so I entered the house quietly and walked over to the couch I was supposed to sleep on. It was eerily quiet and dark outside, and I was already nervous, so I couldn't sleep. The living room was decorated with all sorts of random artifacts and treasures, which caught my attention. I looked around and took in everything. There were cool rocks and souvenirs, but most curiously, strange religious objects and books with cult symbols. I googled the word I saw on the tapestry, and it turned out to be the name of the religion to which the owner of the house adhered. This religion revolves around UFOs. The Bible they follow is basically a classification of hundreds of types of spaceships. After reading this, I was a little alarmed, but after much research, I came to the conclusion that it is not a dangerous cult, just a very strange one. I also curiously read a diary that just lay on the coffee table, where the owner of the house wrote about her travels. One entry was about how she went to Peru and saw a spaceship. She wrote about how she had never seen it so close before. It was all very strange, but I ended up falling asleep anyway. When I woke up in the morning, my hostess made me coffee and without further ado began to tell me about her religion and other conspiracies, such as the government being able to control tornadoes. She was very kind and not overbearing. She just wanted to tell someone her truth. We talked for about an hour before I got back on the road, and she sent me off with a bunch of research material and an Airbnb magazine. As I drove away from that strange little house on the farmland, I couldn't help but wonder what other strange things were out there in the world. It was a surreal experience that I would never forget. And even though it wasn't a scary story, it was certainly one of the strangest experiences in my life.